Hi, I'm Meg, and today I'm going to make something that I've been making for most of my adult life. It's something that I grew up eating. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and it's chicken pot pie. Now, what it is sort of like a stew. There's chicken broth and chicken and potatoes, and we're going to make a homemade egg noodle to put in it. It is not something that's covered with a pastry crust or a puff pastry. That is not this kind of chicken pot pie. I don't know why it's called that. My guess is that it's called that because it's like the pie crust dough gets dropped into the broth in the pot. That's my best guess. I'm gonna start with homemade chicken broth, and I've got another video that tells you exactly how to make that. And then I'm gonna show you how to make the rest of it. So let's get started. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start with the chicken broth. I made chicken broth. Look how beautiful and golden this is. By cooking a bunch of chicken pieces, and it was, what did I say it was? There were 2 wings, 2 drumsticks, the back of it, the neck, and all the parts when you buy a cut-up fryer that we didn't fry. But it only ended up being really like this much meat. And I want more meat than that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is put maybe 2 cups of this broth into a pan, and I'm gonna cook just an extra chicken breast, a boneless, skinless chicken breast that was in the refrigerator, so that we have enough chicken to go with it. Oops. Actually, let's start with 4 cups of it. There we go. The next thing we're gonna do is prepare some vegetables. I peeled 5 little potatoes. They're like medium-sized potatoes, and I wanna cut them. I'm gonna cut them into, what is this, 8s. So half, half, and half. Cut each half into quarters. I think that works out. You want all your potato pieces to be about the same size so that they cook evenly. They're already at the same time. And you want them to be easy to scoop up with a spoon or a fork. You can use a spoon or a fork when you eat pot pie. It is your choice, and we make no judgments. Now we're gonna cut, this is a pretty big white onion. I'm gonna say half of it is plenty. So we're gonna dice that up. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Peel the skin off. And then we're gonna just cut it into decent sized pieces. Like that. Okay. Get rid of this. 2 stalks of celery. And I'm gonna cut it right below the little joint there. There is already celery flavor in the broth, and there's onion onion flavor too, but I strained the celery and onions out after I cooked the broth, and this is going to be fresh for the stew. Don't use the stuff that you cook the broth in. You've got to use fresh ingredients. It's kind of like a layering of ingredients even. And then we're going to need some parsley. Let's grab a little bit. And we're just gonna chop this up kind of coarsely. Yeah, maybe a little finer. It smells good. And that's gonna go in when we cook it, and then when we serve it, we're gonna do more fresh chopped parsley. Now we're gonna make the dough. These are fresh egg noodles rolled thicker than if you were making fresh pasta, but it's kind of like making a pastry dough. So you have 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Half a teaspoon of salt. Let's do a little salt, just a pinch. You don't have to measure it too carefully. This is 4 tablespoons of Crisco brand shortening. And I know Crisco has fallen out of favor in recent years because it is the bad kind of fat. What's it called? Partially, is it hydrogenated? I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's supposed to be bad. But I'm telling you, it makes really good pastry. If you cannot stand the thought of using Crisco, use butter. It turns out really good with butter. I just, for the sake of blending this, really wanted to use Crisco. So you use a pastry cutter and you begin to break up the shortening and incorporate it into the flour. And you're trying to cut it up and distribute it through so that it is even and there are no big chunks. You also could do this in a food processor. I've done that before. It's a really, actually works quite well as a shortcut, but I wanted to do it the way my grandma does it, or did it. So if you look at it, I think my grandma Losh actually did this literally with her hands, and I prefer not to, but you can feel the cold. The Crisco was in the fridge. You can feel it in little lumps. I think it needs to be incorporated a little bit more. Rolling. We are rolling, and we're going to roll out this dough and make some noodles. So here it is. Nice chunk of dough. Put a little flour and sprinkle some flour on your surface. Make sure it's well covered, because what you do not want is for this to stick to the surface. I'll take a rolling pin. This was my grandma Sarah's rolling pin. You can start to smush it out a little, because this doesn't really have to be rolled in a round, but you want it to be rolled evenly. I'm going to use some more flour. Spread that around. Oh, it's very soft. You see, it's not stretching back, it's just staying where I roll it. You want it to be pretty thin. And once it's rolled out, we're going to cut it into strips. Now, I need 2 tools for this. I need a plate. And I need a thin spatula. What do you call this? Spatula turner, one of these. And what we're gonna do is, this is a cutter. You could use a pizza cutter wheel. This has a zigzag edge, I guess. I like to use this one. You could use a knife if you don't have a pizza cutter or one of these, but I like how this makes the edges look. So we are going to make it into squares. I don't know how big those are. And go back and forth. And you can even take the ragged ends off if you want. If you are a perfectionist and don't want weird shaped pieces. But I can tell you that they all taste delicious, so it really doesn't matter what shape they are. And they don't even have to be perfect. These certainly are not. And there we go. Now the broth has come to a boil. This is about 10 cups of chicken broth. And I've got my 5 potatoes here, and we're gonna put them in and start them cooking. Ooh, start them cooking. I splashed myself. Here we go. A little bit more of that. And we're gonna bring the potatoes up to a boil, and I don't know how long they take to get soft. 10 minutes maybe? Okay, now it's time to put the dough into the boiling water. I think the potatoes are as close to cooked. You can stick a fork in one if you're not sure. Yeah, they're close. Close enough. Here's what we do. You make sure that the broth is on a good rolling boil. I have it set at medium-high. And then you muster all your patience and you drop these in one at a time and you stir every so often. If I were to push this whole clump into the broth, it would like meld together and not be good. You can see I have some flour on the noodles left over from when I rolled them out, and that's good because it's gonna help to thicken the broth a little bit. The thing about this soup is that, to me, it's really all about the noodles. And so I did 10 cups of broth, and I did this is a full recipe of the noodles, and it's getting pretty full. And the only other thing we have to add is the chicken. But I'm gonna try and cram all of these in here because they're just so good. It is not a rolling boil, and you will not want it to be a rolling boil, just a very gentle simmer, like almost a boil. And these take, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes to cook. What I have is, I don't know, 2 cups of chicken meat. I took some off the bones that I cooked to make the broth, and then I cooked an extra chicken breast. And it's shredded or chopped or whatever. Well, that's about right. You put that in there, along with a handful of fresh parsley. Let's give it some more pepper. I'm gonna give it just a little bit of salt because there's salt in the broth already. And let's stir it up. I'm not gonna give it any other seasoning because I've already seasoned the broth with poultry seasoning and lots of garlic and onion and stuff. So I think this is probably about right. At this point, it would be a good idea to check it for seasoning to see if it's too, hopefully not too salty. Doesn't need any more salt. And we're gonna let it go for 3 minutes, and then we're gonna serve it up and give it a try. Let's try it. It smells really good. I added some fresh chopped parsley and a little bit of ground, like coarsely ground pepper. Let's taste it. Hot. So pot pie to me is the ultimate comfort food, number 1. Number 2, it's a noodle delivery system. I love these doughy noodles, especially eggy doughy noodles. Oh, that's the fork part. The broth part you eat with a spoon. Oh, but it's so good. It's so good. And let's check the potato. Yep, potato is cooked. Oh, it's perfect. It's exactly what you want on a cold February day. So I hope you'll try and make it. I'm gonna put a recipe, as much as this is a recipe, I'll put the recipe in the notes. And I'm not gonna tell you to like and subscribe because I don't do that. But I hope that if you like this video, you will try it and let me know in the comments and tell a friend. Thanks.